and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. Tonight we'll dwell on Anambra November 6 election. Now, Anambra State was created on the 27th of August 1991 from parts of what was then the East Central State with an approximate population of about 4 million, just a little above 4 million according to the 2006 census. Now, it has had 4 different democratic administrations since the return of democracy in 1999. Now, Saturday this week is going to mark another historic event in the political history of God's own state, as Anambra is known, as eligible voters go to the polls to cast their ballots for who they want to represent them as governor in the next 4 years. Our Tuesday Live tonight will focus on issues around the political arrangements as Anambra people decide. But before our panel of those who know take on this matter of Anambra elections, let's get to see this report by Chukwunonso Nwabweze.
From years to months and from months to weeks, the countdown to the November 6th Anambra governorship election has now trickled down to just a few days. The long wait is increasingly becoming over. And as political parties round off their campaigns, which have been adjudged peaceful and issue-based, the focus is gradually shifting to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and security agencies for the conduct of the polls. The electoral umpire on its part says the commission has put measures in place to deliver a credible election that will reflect the will of the people.
We are quite on course, distributed materials, train ad hoc staff.
With a high level of security threat preparatory to the conduct of the election, security agencies in compliance with the directive of President Muhammadu Buhari to ensure a peaceful electoral process have deployed more than 54,000 senior officers and men across the 3 senatorial districts, 21 local government councils, as well as the more than 5,000 polling units in the state.
We are going to dominate all the towns and the villages of Anambra State. It is meant to build confidence on the people, to tell them that we are on ground and that they can come out and exercise their franchise come 6th of November without threat to anybody.
With these measures and assurances by INEC and security agencies, how prepared are the over 2.5 million eligible voters to cast their ballots for the candidates of their choice on the election day?
For me, it's something that should be taken for granted. I must cast my vote.
We are quite very ready. I'm expected that the government should provide enough security for people to have the confidence that the atmosphere at the election polling booth, to make sure that the polling booth is calm.
If on that day I look around and the atmosphere feels conducive, I will.
As Anambra citizens and residents get set to elect the 6th governor of the state on the 6th of November, it is the expectation of many that the outcome of the entire process serves as a good reference to the conduct of future elections in the country. In Oka, Chukwunonso Nwabweze.
For tonight's discussion, let me introduce our guest to you. I would like to welcome to this program Jide Ujo is a development consultant, author, columnist, and public affairs analyst. Thanks for joining us tonight.
The pleasure is mine, Cyril.
Always a pleasure to see you. Right.
Same.
We are also joined tonight by Chima Christian. He is a public policy analyst, good governance advocate, and a media consultant. He joins us from our Enugu Network Center. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and I'm almost certain that at some point in time we will have the INEC National Commissioner for Information, Mr. Festus Okoye, who is already in Oka. We're hoping any moment from now he'll join us via Zoom. And so we'll get to hear from him what the situation on ground is, the preparation so far, and how ready everyone can say we are. to go through with Anambra on Saturday this week. But back here in the studio, well, Gideon, you've been witness to so many elections now. Give us your experience about these elections and what you think Anambra will be like.
Thanks for the compliments. Yes, I've been around and I've been observing elections since 1999, including I was there in Anambra for the re-election of former Governor Peter Obi. So I have been on ground there. I've seen what Anambra demography and geography looks like. In the lead up to this election, we've seen INEC announce the date for election in good time. I think about February this year, like 10 months notice was given that election in Anambra will be on November 6th. And here it is. Beyond and above that, preparations have been on. Parties have nominated their candidates, and now there are 18 of them. So all the extant registered political parties in Nigeria actually are fielding candidates in this. What we can say is whether it's 5-horse race or 7-horse race, but whatever horse race is, there are, in every election, there are what we call the contenders and then the pretenders. There are those who are running a very high-profile, robust campaigns, and these are known to the people. So Anambra peculiarity is we have 21 local governments in Anambra State. We have 326 wards. We have about 2.5 million registered voters. We do also have what's that? About 5,720 polling units. Incidentally, for the first time I heard INEC coming out to say last week that there will be no election in 86 polling units of this for reasons that...
and this reason is quite clear now, and well, that's what makes a difference in this election now.
Exactly.
Just about everyone is on edge, thinking, in fact, there were those who believed this election would not even take place, given the circumstances of recent times.
Well, it's always like that ahead of every election, particularly off-season or off-cycle election. I must say, one of the things that Anambra has given to Nigeria political lexicon is this off-cycle governorship election. That's where it started from. I recall that in 2006, arising from the controversies on 2003 governorship election, the INEC conducted a governorship election in 2007. But then the incumbent as at then, Mr. Peter Obi, went to court to say, look, we were in court for like 3 years, and for that singular reason, my tenure will not end until my 4 years complete. And they went all through to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, yes, according to, I think, Section 180 of the Constitution, the tenure of the governor starts from when he was sworn in, and hence 4 years after. So, from that moment onward, we start having what is now known as off-cycle governorship election, which we started in Anambra. And it is only in Anambra you have a sitting governor abducted, successfully abducted. It's unheard of. It never happened.
And that's talking about Dr. Chris.
Okay. Now our Minister of Labor and Productivity, when he was the governor in Anambra State, he was abducted by some actors in the state. And then you also see Anambra happens to be a state of wealthy, very powerful and wealthy individuals. It's said to have the highest number of billionaires in Nigeria. I don't know who has done the empirical statistics, but a lot of resources are deployed. And one negative trend, which we don't know how it will play out on Saturday, is issue of money politics, issue of vote buying. This has been an ugly phenomenon in previous elections in Nigeria and in Anambra State. Then one other phenomenon that's also reared its ugly head, even at the best of times, is that Anambra elections always have very low voter turnout.
Okay.
And with the, I recall in 2017, which was the last governorship election, the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra actually also, like they threatened this time around, said that they would not allow elections to hold. But it was held eventually. And this time around, I have no reason to believe that election will not hold. We are just about 72 hours to the D-Day, and every resources have been deployed to make sure that the election hold as scheduled.
Okay, we'll come back to you, but let's go back to our Enugu Center and join Chima Christian. And, well, we'll put the question to you. What are your impressions of the November 6th Anambra election?
Well, what we find is that INEC has assured us that the preparations for the elections are in top gear. We've also begun to receive contingents of Nigerian police. Recall that Nigerian police issued a statement saying that they are going to deploy 34,000 plus policemen and women on duty to make sure that there is adequate security environment in Anambra State relative to the threats of violence and armed incidences that have happened in Anambra in the past 2 weeks, or 2 or 3 weeks. So what we are seeing is that our people are prepared, and the political actors are doing their mobilization. The political parties are, for instance, today we had a rally in Oka. What we see is that everyone is preparing to go to the poll. What we are also looking at is how we can drive people to turn out in their masses on the 6th of November. Because quite frankly, the communication from several quarters, several non-state actors, and then the killings that have characterized the past few weeks, and then the regular sit-at-homes on Mondays that have been complied by, especially those that have been enforced brutally. So those are utmost considerations in the minds of the people. So, but again, it's left for the security agencies, and they've been doing their utmost best to assure in the Anambra that there will be adequate security environment so that anybody who wishes to exercise his or her franchise on the 6th of November will be permitted to do so without any let or hindrance.
Just staying with you, insecurity situation, elections in Nigeria, what's the best way to go about this? The case of Anambra, it's been on for some time, and it has caused so much concern among the people. And with an impending election, if you look around, we've had violence in many parts of the country, and the election periods are not, exempt from this violence. What's the best way to go about this?
What I find is that Anambra doesn't have much of a history of election violence, right? Because if you look at our elections right from 1999 to 2003 to 2007 down to the past election, governorship election of 2017, what you find is that they are not marked or characterized by violence. You could have high campaign pitches, FIFA pitch campaign, enormous amount of resources and wealth deployed, but down to the day of the elections, you hear little or no incidences of violence. So what we find now is that this is a strange situation we have in Anambra, because again, right in 2017, there were several groups, including IPOB that is now proscribed, calling for boycott of elections. Today, that same group, although there is too much equivocation, we don't know whether or not they are calling for. Some people say they are calling for boycott of elections. Some people deny that they are not calling for boycott of elections. So we don't know who and who is calling for elections and who is persuading people not to come out to vote. But there are two broad contributors to the violence we are seeing. First is the economic contributor. You look at the high youth unemployment rates, and then you begin to look at the numbers of people who are susceptible or prone to be used as mercenaries, as thugs, as now unknown gunmen in elections. So when you begin to deal with issues around employment, youth employment, most especially, you will have addressed some part of the problem, because you will no longer have a cannon fodder of people willing to be deployed at elections to do these election biddings. Then the other thing is that you have a political environment that seems to be fertile for violence. You seem to have a political climate whereby people tend to kill those who disagree with them. You see, whereby people want to believe that it's either their way or the highway. People who, for instance, tell you that they no longer believe in this thing, and if you do believe, that they will enforce and make sure. So you are beginning to see a certain closure, sort of the civic space, whereby conversations are no longer heard, arguments are no longer heard. It is seemingly one way that is enforced. You can see this in extremism popping out every here and there. You can also see it in the terms of extremism we are beginning to find in the South. Is so you have the economic contributor to the security situation, and then you have the political contributor. My thinking is that the political contributor is more. So when we begin to deal with political actors, deal with the root causes of this, for instance, if you had watched the debates yesterday, on live television, a candidate of the All Progressives candidates alluded that perhaps the candidates of the All Progressives Congress might have had one or two things to do about the thing. And then if he had that information, people should ask questions. If he had that information, why is he not bringing it up? Why are they not looking into it? So what we see is that what we're looking for is a situation whereby those incidences of violence are being investigated thoroughly, so that the security agents get to the root of the matter, because you have pre-election violence, you have election violence, and you have possibly post-election violence. We have seen pre-election violence in Anambra State. We are now being assured by the security agencies that there will not be election violence. And we're also praying that after the elections on November 6th, that there won't be post-election violence in Anambra State.
We'll return to you in just a moment, but Jide, here in Abuja, the political factor. Shima has talked about the economic factors, and then the political factor. Well, let's look at the political factor first. The conduct of, as you put them, the gladiators. How has that helped to either charge or douse tension?
Well, for me, there's one positive development with this 2021 governorship election in Anambra. The fact that for either because of COVID-19 pandemic or certain rhetorics by some non-state actors like the proscribed IPOB, there have not been rallies, political rallies, the kind of which we saw in many other off-cycle governorship elections, even under this pandemic. Recall that at the peak of this pandemic in August, September, down to October last year, in Edo and Ondo State, there were a lot of, political rallies across the local governments in those states. But this time around, the rallies are not held. What we have seen playing out is more of a man-to-man, neighbor-to-neighbor, one-on-one campaigns, and they're meeting with various cultural groups, religious groups, town hall meetings, and so just campaigning with to small groups of people and individuals. So for that singular reason, we didn't see much of those high rhetorics that usually comes up at when you have large gatherings at rallies. But what we have seen is that in the peculiarity of 2021 governorship election in Anambra is, what we've seen is the gladiators took their campaigns to the media. So media has gained profitably. You see a lot of jingles, political jingles and campaigns taking place on radio and on television, particularly those with coverage in the Southeast as a whole, as a region, and then in Anambra, which is another peculiarity to what we have seen previously in Nigeria. So the gladiators or the contenders have largely behaved themselves, but like my colleague over there in Enugu said, if you look at what the political debate that took place yesterday, particularly between the candidate of Abga, former CBN governor Charles Soludo, and the APC candidate Andy Uba, senator, you will see that the atmosphere was charged because of recriminations, allegations, and all manner of mudslinging that took place at that political debate. But that was a more controlled environment, so it's not like something that have incited violence in the larger public in Anambra State.
All right, let's get back to Enugu and speak to Chima, right? And we go back to the security situation that we started off talking about. And the number of security personnel, policemen that have been moved to Anambra, it's something that we've been seeing in elections. As Jide Ojo said, off-cycle elections, we see huge numbers of security personnel deployed. At the end of the day, we say, well, they were able to stem whatever security threats. But the question all the time is, when you hold general elections, or many more that will be held on the same day, do you have these numbers to deploy around? And should elections continue to be, a matter for massive deployment of security personnel?
Deployment numbers, what it reflects is where we are in our journey to democracy. Remember that democracy is not a destination, it's a journey of constant and continuous improvement. So that our elections are seemingly militarized and then seemingly heavily armed and guarded shows where we are as a people. I believe that at some point after we've grown to a certain degree, that we are going to begin to see certain level of civility, certain level of decorum in the conduct of elections, that there would not be need to deploy this number of policemen or in some cases, draft in military to come and do civilian policing duties in elections. In the 2017 elections, there were 26,000 police resources that were deployed, policemen and women that were deployed. In this election, we have 34,000. Thankfully, it's an off-season election, so the Nigerian Police Force, the NCDC, and the Department of State Services, and then the Nigerian military can afford to withdraw resources from elsewhere to concentrate on Anambra because it's an off-season election. But like you mentioned now, it is not sustainable in the long run. But again, when we have general elections, what we see is that there are places that you could tag major flashpoints. And then again, it's now left for the security to distribute their resources according to their threat assessments. But over time, what we see is that once you begin to take out political actors who act in bad faith, political actors who speak peace and decorum in English, and then incite their followers in vernacular. Once you begin to punish and reward those actions, then you begin to sort of have that reduced. For instance, there have been election violence before in Nigeria, and then after that, what happened? Were those investigated? If it were investigated, what was the result of the investigations? If there were results actually from the investigations, who were found culpable? If who were found culpable, not just at the implementation stage, because what we see is that the boys who implement this, boys who go into these fights and ruffles are sometimes apprehended by the police and all of those things. But they don't just get up there and start acting. It is someone who ideally should mobilize them to act. It is someone who ideally should sponsor them to act. So what I want to see going forward is that once these people are apprehended at that level of it, that the police effort should be able to cascade higher up to whoever gave that demand. So when we begin to see elite punishments at that level, then maybe perhaps our politicians will learn how to play with all sense of civility and decorum. And when that happens, you will begin to see that we don't need this number of policemen. It is not war, it's election. We don't need this number of resources for elections. And it's costing us heavily. Imagine the amount of money it will cost to deploy 34,000 policemen in Anambra State. And whenever you're going, I am just coming back from Anambra to Enugu for this interview. And when you're driving, you see police convoys. You see, and then you will think that you're going to Afghanistan or Iraq. It is not Iraq. So you see what is costing the nation to just have an election. It shouldn't be. We should take out bad political actors. We should reward them. We should make sure that actions have consequences, and so that we will grow up a notch higher. We shouldn't be deploying this number of police every time we have elections.
All right. Thank you so much. And You know, it's a very good time to introduce a security consultant, as we're talking about security issues now with elections in Nigeria. And back here in our Abuja studios, we've been joined by Dr. Muhammad Awal Umar, Bright Project Support Services, a security consultant. Thanks for joining us on Tuesday.
Thank you very much for receiving me.
Right, we're talking about Anambra, November 6th, and the security situation in Anambra State to start with. The massive deployment of security personnel to Anambra, given what has been happening there for some time, and even not that alone, the massive deployment of security services every time there's an election in Nigeria. Let's hear your views on that.
This happens fundamentally because we don't take daily security seriously. Our regular lives, our daily lives are constantly under threat through a wide range of disturbing circumstances. And as a country, we don't act well enough to improve safety and security, to improve a sense of safety and security. It's one thing for a commissioner of police to tell you Anambra is safe. It's another for an Anambra woman in Oka to tell you Oka is safe. We don't work on the fear of crime. We don't work on sense of security that citizens have. So we don't give citizens confidence that they are safe. And with the current role of media, incidents take precedence as against trends. And when you are discussing crime, incidents are good for storylines, but they are not necessarily an effective measure of the security architecture or agencies. We need to have a more robust discussion on what exactly do we want. There is no country on earth that is free of crime, that is 100% secure. How much of crime can we live with, not because we want to, but because of the human element? And how much can we pick up arms on and make sure that it doesn't escalate? Anambra has been very, very dicey for a very long time. It's not because of the current incidences of the last 2-3 years. It's always been a fluid circumstance for obvious reasons. As a start, the way the state itself is structured, you find access to security agents is very limited. Not very many roads are in Anambra State. The entire east, you don't get as many roads as you need for security agencies to move around on patrol, to check what is going on, and to ensure daily safety and security. We keep ignoring that. When they say equipping, they buy cars, a few, but before you realize it, they are deployed for the protection of VIPs, the protection of international community. At the end of the day, the typical DPO remains empty-handed. But they are expected to provide the safety and security. Look at the trend of attacking police stations. To the extent they burn police stations down, they burn vehicles, they kill police officers, they take away arms. They are merely headlines. Nothing substantive has been done because Nigeria is used to reactive policing. Police structures go to sleep until something happens, then they wake up. They jump into a truck, move around a bit, arrest whoever is unlucky, at the end of the day get away with it. Now, it's not just enough to arrest, you have to ensure prosecution. And unless you have police reform and justice sector reform juxtaposed, you will not be able to get the efficiency you need. So, to make it quick, the essence of what is happening in Anambra today is merely a reflection of what is likely to happen across Nigeria. I don't see 34,000 police officers doing much because as a start, maybe 1,000, 2,000 are already attached to the commissioners, DIGs, and AIGs that have been posted there. Each will carry between 5 and 15 of such officers, and they tend to be the most efficient, better trained officers. What is left for daily work are the rank and file, quote unquote. Now, that's not going to help anybody. So as a small summary, let me say, I don't expect much benefit out of this.
Okay.
Because safety and security during election is not just about securing the polling booth. It's enabling people to come out, enabling people to go and vote freely. Once these are absent, you don't have a democracy and you don't have an election.
All right. Very interesting angles you've brought in here. We'll return to you in just a moment. Just to let you know that we're doing all we can to establish links with Mr. Festus Okui, the INEC Commissioner, Information Commissioner. As soon as he is up and running, oh yeah, well, now we've been able to establish links with him. He joins us from Oka. Good evening. It's good to see you. We've been expecting to link up with you since we started this program. Good to see you. Well, I just want to hope that your sound is been fixed. But if you can hear me, first things we'd ask you is give us an update on the preparation so far for the Anambra election of Saturday.
I'm getting ready. I hope you can hear me. We are getting ready for the election, and all preparations are on top gear. We've made sure that all the non-sensitive materials have been deployed. The sensitive materials are already with the central bank, and we've trained all the people we need to train, and we are ready for the election.
It's about those places that INEC had, earlier on raised concern that elections might not hold, and just, refresh our memories on the reasons why.
No. I think that there's a huge misunderstanding relating to the commission said there are going to be 0 votes returned from those places. But what happened was that when we expanded access to polling units, we created an additional 1,112 new polling units in Anambra State. In other words, we converted 1,112 voting points into full-fledged polling units. And what we did was that some of the polling units, we removed them from the mother polling units and took them to the places where people really desire them. Now, some of the people who ought to be in these new polling units have not transferred their locations to these new polling units. And all the people that
Oh dear, we seem to be having some challenges with getting the audio right. But, well, if you're still there, just hang in there. We'll come back to you, and we'll do our best to get you loud and clear. Okay, you're back, right. So just go ahead from where you left off.
No, what I was just saying is that the new polling units recorded zero allocation during this particular period because we have not done what we call batch transfer. When we do batch transfer and allocate people to polling units, then they will record people. Now, what we have done is that we didn't configure any beavers for these polling units. We didn't print any ballot papers for these polling units, and we did not print any result sheet. So there are no human beings in these new polling units until after the elections. Then we can do what we call batch transfer or allocate people to these new polling units. So nobody is being disenfranchised, and no votes will be returned from these 86 polling units.
You know what I'd like you to do, Mr. Festus Okui? Could you explain that in further details? Because there are quite a number of people who might not just get it firsthand. Could you explain again? Now you ended up by saying no one is being disenfranchised. Now, could you further clarify that so everyone would be clear about it, that this is not going to affect the outcome either positively or negatively? Well, when I say positively, I mean it wouldn't be in the favor of one candidate against another at the end of the elections.
Now, for you to properly understand what we have done, you need to understand the configuration of each polling unit. Now, ordinarily, we ought to have maybe around 500 registered voters in a polling unit. But in some of our polling units, we had over 3,000 registered voters. So in order to minimize the challenges of overcrowding in these polling units, we created what we call voting points attached to the main polling unit. So if, for instance, a polling unit has 3,000 registered voters, we may create 3 or 4 voting points in order to make sure that people vote on time. So these voting points, when they finish voting, the assistant presiding officers in charge of the voting points will carry all the votes from the voting points and go to the mother polling unit, to the main polling unit, and then the votes will be calculated because it is only one polling unit. So what we have done is that those 4 voting points that people used to vote in, what we did was that we carried 2 of those voting points, converted them into full-fledged polling units, and took them elsewhere where we believe that the people who are overcrowding these polling units are. Now, when we took these polling units to those places, there are no registered voters in those places. And then we started the CVR. So our hope was that as we continue with the CVR, people will choose these new polling units as their new polling units. And those people who were formerly in these voting points may agree to transfer their votes to these 2 new polling units. But the registered voters in the mother polling unit did not transfer to these polling units. So what ordinarily we should do is to look at their addresses and do what we call vice transfer, or allocate people to these new polling units. But we have not done that because of the insecurity in Anambra State, and also because of the fact that we didn't want to dislocate people from the polling units they are used to into a new polling unit. And the people who did the CVR did not choose these new polling units as their new polling units, probably because we have not gone very, very far with the CVR. So because we don't have voters in these 86 polling units, we didn't print ballot papers for them, we didn't print result sheets for them, and we didn't configure any of the any bimodal voter accreditation system for them. So on election day, nothing will happen in these 2 polling units. And we have printed the name and addresses of these 86 polling units and given to the political parties. So nothing will happen in these 86 polling units on election day.
Okay. Well, just staying with you a moment longer, as the election management body, you've done, well, your best, and the rest of it is going to the success of most of what you've done now will, to some extent, depend on the operations of other agencies. Now, what are your expectations given the situation in Anambra? Low voter turnout, a high turnout? Well, if you can hazard, a guess on that.
Well, we just finished a meeting with the Commissioner of Police and the heads of the security agencies in Anambra. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sure, go ahead.
Yes, we just finished a meeting with the heads of all the security agencies in Anambra State. The Commissioner of Police was there, the Director of Department of State Services was there, and the heads of other security agencies were there. They gave us comprehensive briefing on what they have done, what remains to be done, the steps that are taken to make sure that they secure the electoral environment for proper deployment of materials and other assets and other resources. And we are convinced, and we got very firm assurance that they are going to dominate the environment and are going to doing confidence building initiatives and measures to make sure that the people have enough confidence to come out to vote. Of course, there are very serious challenges. There still remains challenges. Challenges around fear and trepidation on the part of the voters. Challenges of fear amongst the ad hoc staff and transporters and so on. But we are doing our best to make sure that we build their confidence, give them the assurance that all will be well. The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission is here. All the national commissioners of the commission are here. We have 7 resident electoral commissioners here and almost all the directors of the commission. And we are firming up our measures to make sure that nothing from our own part goes to hamper the success of this particular election. So we are doing a lot. Tomorrow, we are going to have a stakeholders meeting with leaders of political parties, the candidates, the civil society groups and organizations, the religious leaders, traditional leaders, and so on and so forth, in order to also give them the assurance that this commission is committed to the conduct of free, fair, and transparent elections. And so we are committed, and we have the courage to proceed, and we are proceeding.
All right, thank you very much. We'll return to you sometime later as we continue in this program. But looking at it on a broad spectrum, watchers have said that elections in Nigeria are comparable to going to war of some sorts. Fear that the INEC Commissioner talked about, fear of the voters, fear of even staff of the Election Management Agency. And it also goes back to the conduct of politicians, political parties, and so many variables. This is what elections in Nigeria have come to be seen as. We have a number of reports as we discuss Anambra governorship elections. Let's take the first of them from Benin. This is by Agatha Egwari Ojo.
It is Nigerians who will, by their conduct, either make or mar a system in which everyone is important. The process must establish equal opportunities and a level playing field for all. Leaders as well as elites must guide their utterances and ensure that the transition process is smooth at all levels.
That independence that actually ascribed to INEC, the federal government should allow it be. The various political parties, they should open enough window for every aspiring youth or aspiring politician to contest for elected position. The cost of buying forms for the various positions is too high. This is carrying most youths away. For the INEC, they should be neutral in all sense of it. Anybody trying to influence them, any political party trying to influence, any force trying to influence them, to thwart, to subvert the electoral process, they should resist it.
Voters, either as men, as women or youths, contestants or candidates in the elections, I think their best bet is to make sure they vote the candidates of their choice without being paid to do so.
Nigerian youths from ages 18 to 35 remain the largest chunk of the country's population, and it has been observed that their roles in election-related violence has been an area of grave concern. They have not only been perpetrators, but major victims. Stakeholders are of the view that channeling their energy to creativity and aspiring to be political leaders and activists will foster positive and lasting change, as well as deepen and defend democracy.
Democracy have come to stay, and all of us, our hands must be on deck to ensure that we defend Nigeria's democracy. One thing we have always told our youth is to shun money politics.
It is not to use our youth to exhibit heroism, but for our youth to contribute stupendiously towards the development or the sustenance of our democracy. That is why our youth are coming out today.
They want all hands on deck to change the narratives during elections in the country for better and enable a strong democracy. This way, good governance will thrive and further reinforce the notion that elections
the politicians and the political parties. Many analysts would say the politicians themselves only reflect the political parties. So many of them are without internal democracy of any sort. And so it's not expected that their products, the products of these parties, would be able to give democracy. And all they can do is pay lip service. What do you say?
Well, you are not far from the truth. Late Professor Claude Ake of blessed memory, a political economist of note, said many years ago in one of his published books that Nigeria, the problem with Nigeria is that we are running democracy without Democrats. And where you run democracy without people who believe in the tenets of democracy, what then do you say? Tomorrow is Wednesday. Ahead of Saturday, you will see a number of developments in Anambra State. Predictively, take it to the bank. There will be a lot of fake news, misinformation, disinformation that will be spread deliberately to either undermine the process or, stack the odds in their favor. I'm glad that the INEC National Commissioner said those 86 polling units have been printed and circulated to all the political parties. Because before you know it, they will say the result of those 86 polling units is already in the place.
All right, that's why we asked you.
That's part of the disinformation and misinformation.
Right.
And what they will also want to do, now that the place is saturated with security agents, is to scare people off. And about last week, there was a rumor that says, even while INEC was training these ad hoc staff, they said a lot of ad hoc staff have pulled out, that they are not going to, that they are afraid for their lives, so they are not coming forward for the conduct of the election. Meanwhile, as at that time that news went viral, INEC has not even concluded the training of its ad hoc staff. So where did that come from? From the political class who wanted to create an atmosphere of fear and, to undermine the process. There's also the element of those who INEC has signed MOU with for the use of their vehicles, operational vehicles, boat owners and all of that. Could you believe, from past experiences, this political elite, I'm pointing out their undemocratic behavior. That's why I'm citing this example. They can go to the extent of paying those people not to show up on the morning of election to convey the staff and materials. Because it always baffles me. Anna will give us updates and say, as at the Friday evening, all sensitive and non-sensitive materials, including personnel, have been deployed to ward level, or what they call registration area, RAC, registration area center. Now, in each of the registration area center, there are approximately 10, 12 polling units. And you will not want to think that a polling unit will be as far as, one being near, another in Kubwa, another in Lugbe, that it's going to be like maybe 5 minutes walk to one another. Now, if you have already deployed to almost 3-5 minutes walk to the end point where these materials will be used, why then do we have delays in commencement of voting? So something is, and I do believe, I do believe that INEC has taken precautionary and action and have plan B for whatever sabotage that could be afloat between Friday and Saturday. Because these people, these gladiators, they are always at it. You cannot overemphasize the fact that there could be some scary news between Thursday, Friday, that will make many parents to say, look, Chukuma, you are not going to do presiding officer. I need you alive. Or things like that. Because the moment you say, oh, maybe there was an explosion, so they could say there is an explosion where there is none. Scaremongering, rumor-mongering, all in the name of undermining the process. Or even buying off people who INEC had already negotiated with to deliver certain services or goods. And all of this just to prove that if they cannot win, they can subvert. But all of this, INEC, luckily we have Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who is the first chairman of INEC to win or to get reappointed for a second term. And he is a very experienced administrator, and having conducted general elections and several off-cycle elections, I know that what I'm saying now is not news to him. It's just that it should, like Boy Scouts, they should be prepared for any act of sabotage that may be afloat.
Okay, yes, sabotage, you know, misinformation, disinformation, scaremongering, these are all these have all been seen in many of the elections that have been held. But let's take this other report now. This one is from Kaduna. Suleiman Abdullahi Rigachku.
Since the advent of the current democracy in 1999, successive governments have taken steps to check perceived electoral irregularities and create conducive atmosphere for elections to thrive, in addition to giving credibility to the process. The electoral umpire, INEC, introduced measures such as the optical map recognition, handheld device, direct data capturing machines, and smart card reader for the conduct of the elections.
After every election, we come for what we call an election review workshop, where we sit down, INEC and our stakeholders. We tell each other the truth. What has happened during the past election? What are the mistakes? What are the issues that came up? How can we avoid them? When they came up, what was the solution? Was that solution okay? If it is okay, fine, we adopt it. If it is not okay, then we change into another system. So with every election, subsequent elections, INEC has been improving.
Stakeholders attribute challenges associated with previous elections to personal interest by some political office seekers.
Politicians engage the young people, especially the youth, to have this initiative of stealing ballot boxes or snatching ballot boxes or destroying ballot boxes in polling units.
The youth, who constitute majority of Nigeria's population, therefore, are critical stakeholders in defending the nation's democracy and making the environment safe for elections to thrive.
Democracy is for all of us. It's a question of numbers. Reach out to the people. INEC needs its stakeholders to come on board to also help in sensitizing and enlightening the populace on the need for them to come and vote.
Ahead of 2023 general election, the INEC says it will continue to engage relevant stakeholders and the youths to fashion out ways for the conduct of free, fair, and credible elections.
All right, talking about elections, let's go over to our Enugu Center. And Chima, you've listened to so many of the views from those who were interviewed on those reports, those two reports we carried. Essentially, you've had the opportunity to listen to Dr. Mohammed Awal Umar, who joined us on this program, the security consultant, and his views on this. Now, they say being forewarned is being forearmed. It's expected that all the security agencies are on top of the situation. They're sure to do their best to make sure that Anambra elections hold peacefully. But then there's still a big question. What if voter apathy is taken to new heights? What will happen? Is there any plan B, as they say, to take care of the situation?
There is, I am not aware. What you see that happened in 2017 is that we had a low voter turnout. And then with the current dynamics, quite rightly, I was expecting to hear Professor Mr. Koye's views on that, but he did not answer your question as to whether or not he expects high turnout, low turnout, or whatever the turnout will be. So, but for analysts down here, from the communications that have been going on so far, and from listening to the people that will actually come out on that day to cast their votes, what we're expecting that the numbers might be lower than that of 2017, despite the fact that there have been considerable improvement, at least about 70-something thousand more voter in more registrants who are supposed to take part in that election. The other thing is this, that you have a situation where there are challenges that are left unaddressed, and they now begin to rear their heads towards these elections. Challenges relating to the issues and the contributors to those insecurities. Professor Awal in the studio talked about those conditions, looking at that. But there is something else you need to look at when you talk about these issues. If indeed there were few people who turn out on the election day to cast their votes, that makes the government unpopular. You can now say that the government was not voted by popular ballots. And then we have crisis, leadership crisis down here, where our leaders are seen as not credible or as not responsive. So when you have a leader who was elected by, say, I'm just giving the number now, let me not just give a number, by, say, few number of votes, how then is the leader credible? How then is the leader credible? So you have issues with credibility of the leadership recruitment protocol. So that's why, but it's now belated, so belated for the National Orientation Agency and the media and all available platforms to keep mobilizing people in their numbers. And then, because of the security situation, the political parties who should have done that work of mobilization were handicapped and impaired, that they couldn't do their campaigns, they couldn't do their rallies, they couldn't do all they would have done to bring out people, to propel people, to excite people, to give people reasons to come out on November 6th. So we're looking at a possible situation of low voter turnout that could also imply that the elected government might not be a popular government, but whatever it is, we're hoping that whoever emerges from that process, which we are now being guaranteed, that will be free, fair, and sufficiently transparent. Whoever emerges from that process will begin to build back trust, so that in 2023, and then in the elections that will come up in Anambra State in 2025, that will begin to see people who are more enthusiastic to exercise their franchise. People fought for this franchise to be exercised. People often forget this, that people laid down their lives for Nigeria to enjoy the democracy we're enjoying today. Today we now have that democracy, we now have that option to vote, but people willingly, or in some cases coerced not to vote. That is not the kind of democracy we want to see.
All right. Thank you very much, Chima. And at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, there'll be more issues on Anambra Decides. Stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back.
Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, this is the segment where you get to join the conversation in the studio through phone calls. The numbers will be on your screen. You can take advantage of those numbers and call in. But like we always say, every Tuesday evening, we acquaint you with the procedure. At the correct time, when the phone lines are open, you call in and your call gets through to the studio. Do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set so we can avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we always encourage you to go straight to the point. Don't bother too much about the greetings. Just go straight to the point, ask your question or make a comment. And whatever issues you raise, our guests will be only too willing to analyze those issues you raise and propose solutions. So Once again, thanks for being with us. I'd like to, well, let's just quickly find out if Mr. Festus Okoye is still there. Okay, so we go straight to him and say, well, we're still talking about voter apathy. Well, it's possible, even with all the reassurances, it's possible that very few people might turn out. We hope that people will turn out in their large numbers, but it's a situation that can be expected. But so at this point, I would ask you to refresh our memories. What does it take for any candidate to win the election?
Well, this is a very, very valid question, and also it's a very, very tricky question. Now, in relation to Anambra State, as of today, we have a total registered voter population of 2,525,471. And these registered voters are spread across the 5,720 polling units in Anambra State. Now, Section 179 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, which is the fundamental law of the land, which is the ground norm, has made provision in relation to the threshold a candidate must cross in order to be declared as having been duly elected. Now, it provides that for a candidate to be declared as having been duly elected and returned as elected, the candidate must score the highest number of votes cast in that election. Not only that, the candidate must also secure a quarter of the votes cast in 2/3 of all the local government areas of Anambra State. Now, we have 21 local government areas in Anambra State. So the implication is that let me put it differently. Our expectation as a commission is that the people of Anambra State will come out en masse to exercise their democratic franchise, because this is their sovereign right. The election is about the future of Anambra State. It's about the future of the children of Anambra State. It's about the survival of democracy and electoral politics in Nigeria. So our expectation, and also based on what we have done, is that people should definitely turn out and come and exercise their democratic franchise. It was on the basis of this that we created additional polling units or converted voting points into full-fledged polling units, and then took these polling units closer to the people, women who are pregnant, closer to persons with disability, closer to the elderly, so that they can come out and see a polling unit closer to them. It was also on the basis of this that we created the online pre-registration portal through which young Nigerians have pre-registered. And as one of the guests in the studio pointed out, we had a total valid registered voters of 76,104 after a CVR. Now, when we added the figure of those who did transfer and those who did new registration, you had a total of 81,774. And this, their permanent voters cards have been taken to the various local government areas and are already collecting. Now, the implication of Section 179, subsection 2 of the Constitution is that the total number of registered voters does not matter. What matters is the person who gets the majority, the highest number of votes, and the person who secures a quarter of the votes in 2/3 of all the local government areas of Anambra State. The Constitution did not specify the exact number you must get. So the implication is that in a local government area, if two people, for instance, come out and vote, and the two of them vote for two political parties, the implication is that one political party has already secured a quarter of the votes cast in that particular local government. And so if you extrapolate that to maybe 14 local governments, and a candidate gets 50% of the votes in each local government, if you extrapolate, you will see the number that is required for the candidate to win. You can theoretically claim that the person has opaque mandate, the person does not have a very, very good mandate. But what is important is the mandate prescribed by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But I think as an electoral management body, we have done a lot to give people confidence to come out and exercise their democratic franchise.
Oh dear. Well, okay. We'll still keep returning to you. Very important that link to Oka. Yes, he's back, right? Okay. Well, that link to Oka is one of the most important components of this discussion because Mr. Festus Okoye is the Commissioner in charge of information for INEC. He's right there in Oka. And so we'll from time to time be returning to him to get updates. But we have our first caller tonight, calling in from Edo. Chike. Hello, Chike. Go right ahead. Is Chike still with us?
Hello?
Chike, you didn't hear me. I said turn down the volume of your TV set as soon as your call gets through.
Okay.
Okay.
The issue of security. The Southeast before now has been in crisis. It is not accessible to so many people. The security agency are not operating fully. Even I have not been able to go to my own state, Imo State, for quite some time because of the security challenges. And I have expected the government to make maybe compromise or try to make peace with those or settle the issues before there will be an election. Because if you're going to throw, you're saying that sending thousands of security men to Anambra, those people are humans. They are people's fathers, they are people's mothers, they are people's children. You cannot just throw people's lives on the line thinking that you just end result like that. It is wrong. I believe the government of these days should do something about what is the problem right now in the Southeast. And after settling it, then there can be an election. Because if this election fails, it will echo throughout the entire country. We see how the problem of ENSA started. We don't want that again. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Chike. I'll just keep the calls coming. Let's come back to our security consultant here, where Chike has just said doesn't think elections should hold. There are threats, security threats. You should postpone. But then we're thinking there are security threats almost everywhere in the country. Would that be a basis for postponing the elections and say, well, we should wait until all these security threats have been taken care of? Is that possible?
In management of any type, decisions have to be made. Sometimes you take the easy decision, which gives you better safety. So you say no election, nobody will die, everybody will go to bed and sleep, and you will continue negotiating. But as a government, it cannot keep the window of negotiation forever. There has to be a limit to which it can take discussions and negotiations regarding any group making demands within its territory. So it cannot say because we have not reached an agreement with 1, 2, 3, or A and B and C, then all government activities must stop, all public activities must stop. It undermines its integrity as the manager and government of the territory. So it's important for the government to make it clear to everybody that it is in charge. Now, Anambra, sadly, has multiple layers of security threats. The average state in Nigeria has political tension, political concerns, But in Anambra, it has many layers of concerns. There are fiscal issues regarding robberies, people wanting to make quick money, kidnappings, etc. Then add to that the secessionists and their agitation, add to it, and then you come and add the political dynamics that are ongoing, which, let me also split it into two. Within parties, there are concerns. So you can't say, for example, Abuja is like clearly running. You can't say PDP is clearly running. All of the big parties have issues internal, which, as we know, is likely to feed again into the crisis that is already going on. Now, add again the inter-party conflict again, where parties are struggling to gain control because they need a bloc to present at federal level to negotiate for the so-called presidential seat. So when you take all these dynamics into view, you would notice that it's not very easy for the Nigerian government to say, no, let us postpone. And then when you postpone, you create this concern of who becomes governor in the interim. How long will that person become a governor? So if you say, okay, fine, a statutory number of days, months is X, how do you know you will achieve a settlement and have peace in that period of time? In my view, yes, there are issues. Yes, there are concerns. He couldn't go to Imo. Most of us can't go to Imo. It's not just him. That's the reality of it. We want to go to Imo. We are not Igbo, but we have friends there. We lived there at one point or the other, but we can't go, and it gives us concern. So it's not just one or two persons or the Igbo stock that is concerned. Every Nigerian is concerned. So when you look at it clearly, you will notice that government had to take this painful decision. Run processes, run public affairs, manage public affairs the best it can, deploy security agencies the best it can, roll out advocacy campaigns, negotiations with established groups that are not too radical, that can be able to douse some tension, and then hope for the best.
Okay. Right, back to the phones now. We have Calvin calling in from Port Harcourt. Go right ahead. Hello.
Yeah, good evening. Hello?
Yes, Calvin, go ahead.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Yes, concerning the Anambra State, please. We are talking, I can hear the analyst referring on security issues and some certain issues like the analyst on security mainly, who was talking about security and also ritualists and the rest of them to make mention of. To me, I didn't get it up to that extent, because the issue we have in Anambra State before now, the previous governor has not been fair to the people that elected him in the office of governors. They have been so rude and so brutal and so, hard-hearted to them. We all are human beings. You can put me in your shoes, or I put you in my shoes, and then you see how it is. These are the people that at the end, by Saturday now, the poor masses will come out en mass to vote, elect someone of their own choice. But the people will, end of the day, turn his or her heart against the people that elected him in that office. But such things in Nigeria here is very much unfair to me. Because you can do something, for instance, now, I'm contesting for governorship election, and people have enough confidence and believe on me, and give me the mandate that, believing that I can deliver them on this very post. End of the day, I turn back against them and treat them the way previous sitting governors to say Obiano did since 2017. Or in fact, over his 8 years tenure, he has been someone that haven't nothing good right about. Likewise, I would have even mentioned of one of the governors in this. Let me not go into that aspect. So, our federal government is not even, by trying to know what is the issue and know what is the problem, and try to put listen to it and see how it can end to assist.
Okay.
Thank you, please.
Thank you very much, Kelvin. Well, back here in the studio, well, some of the concerns raised. People go out and elect, and maybe they believe that at the end of the day, those they've chosen have not delivered. Right. It's a process, and so the next time they get the wiser and go for someone else. But the issue they're saying is let the votes count. What do you say?
Yeah, it's important to let the vote count. I didn't quite get what Kelvin was hinting at, whether he was talking of this election being a referendum on the performance of Willie Obiano, who is actually an outgoing governor. He's not going to seek re-election. Whatever he has done or failed to do, well, it may haunt his political party, but he as an individual is not going to be rewarded in any way by whoever comes in after Sunday, when the result may have been known. But suffice to say that performance is relative. And he has offered just his own personal opinion. He is living in Port Harcourt. People who are on ground in Anambra State may have similar sentiments or may have a different opinion. If you listen to the Abuja campaign train, they said he has delivered exceedingly well, that he has even given them a new international airport, that he pays salary as at when due.
Okay.
But, you know, politicians, the kind of politics we play in Nigeria is what I call PAD, pull him down or pull her down, or crabism. So you don't want to glorify your opponent, even if he has performed or he hasn't. We try to demonize one another, demarcate one another. But that is, you said something about Nigeria election being a war. A war without shooting, a war without guns. But everything is thrown into it, including, like I said earlier, on misinformation, disinformation, fake news, hate speech, you know, all manner of things, sabotage, just because it's a winner-takes-all political system. It's a zero-sum game where, you know, and as a student of politics, there's something we call game theory. In game theory, you envisage what the action of your opponent will be and try to checkmate them as in the game of chess. And that is why may Anambra win on Saturday. The most important thing is let the process be without let or hindrance. Let every of the actors and stakeholders play by the rules. Let the people, the registered voters in Anambra, be the one to solely determine who will be their next governor.
Okay. Let's go back to Awka now. Mr. Festus Okoye, you're still there? Yes. And this time around, bring us up to speed on the security of INEC materials and staff, if you will.
We, as of today, the security agencies have secured the INEC offices at the various local governments. In this respect, 21 local governments. They have also secured the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Commission here in Awka. As you are aware, this particular commission suffered huge losses in relation to the arson attack we had in our office. We lost over 326 generating sets. We lost our collation center and pavilion. We lost our stores. We lost 6 utility vehicles. Our headquarters was completely vandalized and also burnt. But we have fully recovered. We have reconstructed and re-engineered these offices, and that is where we are operating from as of today. Now, we have also done a huge recruitment of ad hoc staff. Yes, we have a shortfalls here and there, but we have the capacity to make up for those shortfalls. We also have vesting transporters that are going to transport election materials and our staff to the various polling units on election day and to the various local government offices, and also do what we call reverse logistics after the votes are counted and results declared at the level of the polling units. And so we are really upbeat. But as I say, security is a big concern. Fake rumors and rumor mongering is a huge concern. Even as we are, in fact, we were at the tarmac in Abuja today when there were all sorts of fake rumors on the net relating to the INEC chairman in relation to having been killed in Oka, when in actual fact we were still at the tarmac at the Abuja airport. So this type of rumor has pervaded the atmosphere and is creating some level of panic. But this commission is determined to put through with this particular election. We have invested so much in this election. The sensitive materials required for this election have been the central bank has already taken control of the sensitive materials required for this particular election. On Wednesday, the political parties will inspect these materials at the central bank, and then on Thursday, these materials will leave for the various local government areas of Anambra State, preparatory to being deployed. The few shortfalls we have in terms of ad hoc staff, we have our plan A, plan B, and plan C in terms of how to address them. But what is more fundamental is the sense of foreboding, the sense of fear, and the sense of anxiety, the sense of unforeseen circumstance in relation to what is going to happen on Saturday. But we have given very firm assurance to the voters in Anambra State that we have made adequate arrangements for their votes to count. We have also made concrete arrangements to make sure that we secure the lives and security of the ad hoc staff that will be deployed, and also the voters. And the various security agencies have been doing a show of force and also building the confidence of the people that when they come out to vote, they will be protected. So we urge the people of Anambra.
All right, that's good. More reassurances. Let's try the phones now and see if Boone from Enugu. I hope I got that correctly. Hello.
Live by TV.
Is that the caller from Enugu?
Yes, Boone from Enugu speaking.
Right, go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, gentlemen.
Yes.
I'm calling from Enugu, but I'm from Anambra. I'm from Anambra, and I will be told I'm a stakeholder in my ward. So, what I want to say regards to this security is that we are scared. I have to be true. We are scared of what is happening in Anambra, and there's no doubt about it. Both the sit-at-homes and everything. So, in this case, what my family, for example, has been telling me I should not go home, this one, but I had to go because I'm a stakeholder. I have to go and cast my vote. But what will I do when the whole pressure on the family is then? So that is what everything is. Everybody is finding it difficult to go home to cast their votes. I have a friend also in Enugu here. The family from US are calling him not to go home. And he has decided not to go home, but I'm telling him we have to go and cast our vote. So what we are asking people is that we cannot run away from our country. We cannot run away. We have to do it. We have to get the right person on that seat for us to settle the matters in this nation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Boom from Enugu. Thank you. Says keep the spirit alive. Can't run away from your country. Let's go. Well, we'll stay in Enugu, but this time Enugu Center, where Chima is. And Chima, what are your thoughts on that?
I have also had similar comments. For instance, where you talk about elections and you see comments on Facebook where you have families, friends who are concerned about your safety, about all of these things. And then, yes, they are loved ones. Nobody would love to hear, for instance, that a loved one had run into issues just because he went out to cast his or her votes. But the question really is, how did we get to this point? That before now, in your mobilization of people to vote, the only excuse is that votes no longer count. That was in 1999, that was in 2003, where you tell people, please come out and vote, and they say, oh, why will I vote? Our votes don't count. Today, votes count, and that's why politicians are willing to buy those votes, some for 5,000, for some 10,000, and for some less than that, but they are willing to buy those votes because they know that those votes count. So people no longer tell you, oh, votes don't count. They are telling you now, oh, I'm afraid of my safety. So how did Nigeria get to this level where people are now so afraid to go and cast their votes? So Nigeria, the managers of Nigeria's security, the managers of Nigeria's diversity, managers of Nigeria's economy should be called to question and ask, how did this happen? And those are the things we are looking at. But again, casting aspersions or laying blames will not solve the problems. It is now left for us. This is where we are. It could get further worse than this, but we shouldn't allow it to. That's why we have to mobilize all the stakeholders. We have to mobilize those in government. We have to mobilize those outside of government, to mobilize traditional institutions, youth groups, including educational institutions, and then the civil society, mobilize all partners to be on stake, because this state and the nation at large is ours. There's something I read somewhere that a state, no matter how bad, is better than a stateless society. And that is what we're preaching, because we have to come back and fix these things. We have to come back and give people that confidence that after this election, which we are quite sure will hold, but the subsequent elections, that people should no longer have this fear of being harmed or killed in the process of trying to cast their votes. So efforts should be made by those in authority and those outside of authority, including those in the media and in the civil society, to build the kind of society, to build the kind of Nigeria we want to live in.
Lines are still open. Hopefully we'll get one or two more calls before the end of this program. Keep those calls coming through, and we'll take them. Yes, Nigerians must continue to do what is necessary to keep democracy going. We have just another report, this time from Akure. Doris Olumoko reports.
Peaceful conduct of elections strengthens democracy and democratic governance. However, where the election is not well conducted or organized, the democratic architecture suffers, leading to staggered elections in some states, as it is the case in Anambra and Ondo states.
I think it is better, it is wiser for Anambrans, not only for Anambrans, even for Nigerians, and particularly for Africans and for developing countries, to have a very smooth, a very credible, a very peaceful elections, so that our democracy can be strengthened.
They should obey the laws and rules and guidelines as put in place by INEC and allow the wish and wishes of the people to prevail through clean electioneering procedure.
Some of the identified lapses in previous elections in the country, INEC says, are now being addressed to enhance credibility of the electoral process in Nigeria.
Ondo State was used as a guinea pig to test a lot of new ideas by INEC in terms of conducting a democratically acceptable election to everybody. And did you see anybody crying foul? Although some elements still went to court, but what come out of it? Nothing. So that was good. INEC has now built on that and improved on it to face the difficulties in Anambra State. Anambra problem is man-made. It's not INEC problem. We have prepared a level playing ground for everybody. We consulted with all segments of the society in Anambra. We have appealed to everybody for calm, peace.
With the current happenings in Anambra State, where pockets of violence have been recorded in the build-up to Saturday's governorship elections, some residents of Ondo State who witnessed the 1983 post-election violence are advising stakeholders in the Anambra polls to be cautious.
It affects everybody's lives, economically, so many things. Actually, I pray for so peace can reign in Anambra. Mostly at this point in time, this month that the election is coming on.
All right. Other thoughts about how elections should be in Nigeria. Let's see if we can go back to the phones at this point and take the next call that's coming from Owerri. Okay. Hello. Hello. This call is coming from Owerri, right? Hello.
Hello.
Yes, go right ahead. Just tell us your name and quickly go to the point. Right.
My name is Omeno Kenyin. I'm calling from Owerri.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Anambra election on the 6th of November. Security experts are calling us to come out and vote. They are calling us to come out and vote and exercise our franchise. There's a level ground, there's security, there's this, there's that, for us to come out, we will be protected. That Saturday, you will see any of their family members come out. They will bring us out, endanger our lives, and, sit in their offices and relax. You vote them, the next time, you won't see them again. If they want election in Anambra State, they should call for a peace meeting. We have people like Tim Menakaya. We have people like Emmanuel Iwanya. We have people like Obiano, Ezife. We have Pius and Impious. They should call. Federal government did it in the north when the farmers were quarreling there. They were having Allah and farmers. They called for, a level playing ground. The two groups came for peace talk. When Goodluck Jonathan was the president of Nigeria, he called for a negotiator between Boko Haram and Nigerians, so that there will be peace in Borno when it started. We beg federal government stakeholders in the southeast here, if it's from Anambra, Imo, Ebonyi, Enugu, they should call stakeholders, call leaders in Igbo land. Talk to these people, please. Let's relax this. Let's have election in Anambra State. Say you bet me. No matter whatever you discuss about security, you will see a low turnout on the 6th of November. You will see a very low turnout on the 6th of November. People are afraid. So many people are living in Anambra State. Let us tell ourselves the truth. We won't deceive ourselves forever. Good night and thank you. God bless you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so yes, any other call coming through at this point? No, or perhaps we just go straight. Let's go back to Mr. Festus Okoye in Oka and say, yes, everything is in place. The expectation is that the election will hold, it will be successful. But again, I like to say, look at things from another side. What if at the end of the day, a clear winner does not emerge, given the conditions that the Constitution has laid down? The highest number of votes, 1/4 of votes cast in 2/3 of the local governments. What happens if no one satisfies that condition?
Well, the Constitution has also made provision for that type of eventuality. If you look at subsection 3 of section 179, it says that in default of a candidate duly elected in accordance with the other section in relation to having the highest number of lawful votes and also having 1/4 of the votes cast in 2/3 of all the local governments. It says that if no candidate secures that what should happen is this, that there will be a second election between some of the candidates. One, the candidate that has secured the highest number of votes cast at the election. In other words, you look at the candidate that got the highest number of lawful votes cast at the election, and then one among the remaining candidates who secured a majority of the votes in the highest number of local government areas of the state. And so the only two candidates will be on the ballot. The candidate that secured the highest number of votes cast throughout the state, and also one among the other candidates who secured the highest number of votes in the highest number of local governments. So these are the two people that will be on the ballot if no clear winner emerges on the first ballot.
All right, thank you. Back here in Abuja studio, Jide, someone said one of the biggest issues of the Anambra election is disinformation, fake news, misinformation, going all around. What role can, I'd like you to look at it from two sides, what role can the media, mainstream first, play, and then, well, the social media is largely unregulated, so it's so difficult. So what should be people's attitude when things flash out on social media, screaming headlines and scary, stories?
Well, media has a very onerous responsibility to fact-check many of the information that will be coming from Anambra in the next couple of days. I was shocked to the marrow when I saw a news flash that INEC chairman has been assassinated this afternoon. And that's what Commissioner Okoye just said, that they were at the tarmac here in Abuja. They are on their way to Anambra, and somebody is already reporting the chairman dead in Oka when he's in Abuja. And that's why I said the greatest challenge, and this will spread, they will do a lot more of this in order to scare people, scaremongering. So what the media, the mainstream, the social media, I've said it on several programs, even earlier today, or yesterday, we are now on a new day. I said, look, we need to have conflict-sensitive reportage. Conflict-sensitive reportage that will only portray verified information. And we should not be quick to publish, whether online or offline, things that cannot be verified. Because now we are dealing with issues around hate speech, fake news, misinformation, disinformation, scaremongering, rumor mongering. All of this total package is a war on its own. Now they have taken it off the street. They have taken it online. And online is even worse than if you go on the streets or to the market square to start telling people this has happened. Because before you tell 100 people in the market space, they will have to get on to tell other people. But what you have online, somebody in farthest part of this globe, in Australia, in India, in Brazil, all of them will have access to it, and you see them calling frantically, Chukudi, please, I just read that this has happened. Oh, don't go, please, don't travel home. In fact, you and Mama, all of you, go and meet Uncle in Enugu. And when that happens, how do you convince people to stay and vote? Many of these things, those who are spreading it know they are not true, but the predetermined intention is to scare people off the polling unit, to make sure that they discredit the election. And like my brother Chima said, that whoever emerges victorious at the end of the day does not have the needed legitimacy and credibility. Because imagine if this happens, and we have seen, even in places where there is no kind of tension that is currently in Anambra. In Etiosa Federal Constituency, was it last year or 2 years ago, ANA conducted an election where only 9% of voters turned out. In a Lagos environment that has one of the highest registered voters. 9%. Even the recent by-election that was conducted to fill the vacancy of a senator who died, Senator Musa, I think, which was won by Senator Abiru recently, I think early this year, the turnout was equally poor. And that is a Lagos environment where you don't have the kind of knife-edge tension as is happening in Anambra. So the task before the media practitioner, citizen journalist is, please, let's beware. Let's use media responsibly in the coming days. In the next 72 hours, going to 96 hours, when this critical Anambra decides election will hold, let's fact check many of the information that will be coming, particularly if there are negative news. Rumor has it that there is a deliberate attempt to rig this election in favor of a particular candidate. Can we establish that? Are there evidences to support that? Empirical evidences? There is none. But people just want to discredit and undermine the process by words of mouth, even where no AK-47 is being used. So it is for us to use the media responsibly, either as citizen journalists or our post on social media. We must be very responsible, because whatsoever we post, we should be mindful of those who are gullible not to even think it through whether that is fact or fake. So for this caliber of people, let's use the media responsibly. For the mainstream, let's do the necessary fact-checking before we publish.
All right. Let's go over to Dr. Muhammad Awal Umar. What would you say to security agencies? Oh, well, a call is just coming through? Yes. Okay, we'll ask you to hold on for a moment. Aka from Jos on the line. This probably would be our last caller tonight. Hello, go ahead. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to ask a question to the Honorable Commissioner Koye.
Okay.
The number of security men are enough, but they cannot go to houses to police voters to come out and vote. We have National Electoral Agency and other sister agencies saddled with such type of responsibility. What has the commissioner or the INEC commission itself done in terms of using such available means to incite people in public places, worship places, parks and schools and so on? That's one. Number two, what plans have you put in place to avoid this issue of inconclusive elections, which are the step of freedom election in Nigeria nowadays? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Aka. Straight off, I'm sure that Mr. Festus Okoye heard that, so it's over to you.
Well, in relation to his second question on the issue of inconclusive election, I have made it very, very clear that the framers of the Nigerian Constitution, on their own, embedded within the constitutional and legal framework the issue of inconclusive election. And that was exactly what I was pointing out, that the framers of the Constitution have made it clear that for you to be declared as having been elected, the governor of Anambra State, for instance, you must secure the highest number of votes cast in the election and also secure a quarter of the votes cast in 2/3 of all the local government areas of Anambra State. In default of any candidate securing this threshold, the election becomes inconclusive, and then you have to organize a second election between the candidate that secured the highest number of votes in the election and one among the other candidates that secured the highest number of votes in the highest number of local governments. That's the inconclusive election. Secondly, if, for instance, for any reason whatsoever, the commission is unable to deploy materials and personnel to say 5 local government areas, and then elections are held in the other one, and then you look at the total number of registered voters in these other 5 local governments, if they have the capacity of affecting the outcome of the election in terms of the highest number of votes cast and also in terms of the geographical threshold, then you have an inconclusive election, and you have to conduct election in those areas where elections were not conducted before you can announce a winner. So the issue of inconclusive election is both constitutional and legal, and there's nothing we can do about it in terms of its constitutionality and legality. On the second issue, we have involved all the agencies that we need to involve in terms of voter education. The issue in this election is not as if the voters do not know that they have to come out and exercise their democratic franchise. There are some other intervening variables that has made it slightly impossible, slightly difficult to engage in robust civic and voter education in the manner that we know it. So what we have done is that we are being very creative, we are being innovative in terms of our voter education initiatives through the social media and through the orthodox media, and also using other means. And so we are doing our best in relation to this election.
All right, Mr. Okoye, just one quick question before you go. The last time we were on this program, Tuesday Live, we talked extensively about INEC having the powers to transmit its report. In fact, I recall that we had an issue about whether it was a matter of semantics of transmission of results electronically or otherwise. So in Anambra decides, how will you be sending out those results?
Well, if you look at section 63, 65, and 74 of the electoral legal framework, the collation of results in Nigeria still remains manual. But for the purposes of transparency, for the purposes of building trust, the Commission will continue to upload polling unit level results in terms of from EC8A into our INEC result viewing portal for public viewing. And we believe that Nigerians should follow the results as they come in real time, and then match what is going on at the polling units and with what will be collected at the 326 registration area centers and eventually at the 21 local government areas before it gets to the state headquarters. So we will upload polling unit results into our INEC result viewing portal for public viewing and transparency.
All right, thank you so very much, Mr. Festus Okoye, INEC National Commissioner for Information, who joined us live via Zoom from Oka. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to discuss these matters with you. We wish you the best as you prepare for Saturday, and please stay safe.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity.
All right. Okay, back here in Abuja, let's, just before the phone call, we were asking you what should the security agencies do? That's on the one hand, and of course, we always see this ritual of political actors going into some signing of some peace accord, which hardly ever holds anyway. It has become a symbolic thing of little or no value. What's your impression of those?
It has value in the sense that at least they cannot come out openly and advocate what will sabotage the election.
But you have behind the scenes anyway.
Well, you see, you have neutralized their influence to a reasonable level. When you're trying to gain safety and security, you identify potential sources of concern and you neutralize them. If it means that just before election, after each has cast his vote, they will be taken somewhere and kept, that's a way of, neutralizing them. But let's be honest. In a place like Anambra, can you really say that the fear and concern of violence is limited to the role of political leaders? What of the other interests that are also advocating for no election? Will you get them to come and sign the agreement? So when you do get the political leaders to sign the agreement, you are only getting a small section of the stakeholders. There are a number of other interests out there that are not going to make themselves amenable for any agreement. They would rather undermine whatever efforts you have. So that's another element. Going back to what everybody has mentioned in the last 10 minutes, For reasons we can't understand, political leaders in Nigeria, I don't want to say because of corruption. I don't want to say because of selfishness, because I haven't done any research that can confirm. But they have driven Nigeria's democracy to become relevant only if we take into account the specific leaders that are elected. They have conveniently ignored oversight by citizens. They have conveniently ignored participation of citizens in the entire process. Look at the most recent election concluded in Eagle Square. I think only 3 contestants actually contested. Everybody else was returned unopposed. What does it tell you? That the delegates either didn't have a voice, didn't have a choice, or are not actually representing anybody back home. Because it's impossible for someone, like he said in Etiosa local government in Lagos State, to blindly vote for a candidate from, say, Sokoto State and say unopposed. You would expect some variation, but there is none. So you find we focus so much on the individual winner. Now, this is one of the greatest sabotaging actions to democracy.
All right. Well, we're just about done with this program, so we'll just go quickly to our Enugu Network Center where Chima Christian is, and just say, well, in a few seconds, your final thoughts to round off.
Final thoughts will be a passionate appeal to the security agencies. And again, I sympathize with them because of the risk associated with their job, especially with the volatile nature of Anambra and some parts of the southeast at the moment. But what we appeal to them is to engage in a way that inspires confidence and not in a way that further drives people back to their homes. For instance, we have seen that special forces were deployed to Anambra State ahead of the elections. We are beginning to receive deployment in Anambra State. But for instance, when you look at their operations in, for instance, controlling of traffic, you see that they appear to lose their tempers easily. They appear to be untrained and intemperate for the job. So we wonder what kind of trainings they have coming, but we appeal to their leaders, especially to the rank and file, to have appropriate orientation and education, to always keep their cool in the face of provocation, to always keep their cool, to execute this task at hand with a view of maintaining that police-public relationship, because you don't want to engage in a manner that drives people further back to their homes. And again, we hear that military is also doing Operation Golden Dawn in the southeast, in addition to those who will be drafted to assist in civilian policing duty.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for now. So thank you very much for your concluding thoughts. And we'd like to say thank you for being on this program. Chima Christian, public policy analyst, who joined us from our Enugu Network Center. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. And back here in Abuja, Jide Uju, development consultant, a regular face on our programs here. We'd like to thank you very much for coming on this. And well, we probably will see you during the period. That's on Saturday. Plus, I'm sure you'll be watching out for what
hopefully, this whole week is dedicated to Anambra elections. Okay. But we hope that we will prove the pundits, the naysayers, those who are doomsday prophets, will prove them wrong. Okay. That the election on November 6th will be peaceful, will be successful, will be conclusive.
All right. Thank you very much. And also thank you very much to Dr. Muhammad Awal Umar, Bright Project Support Services, a security expert who's been with us today.
Thank you too.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you too for being with us thus far on this program. It's always a pleasure to host you on Tuesday Live. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Continue to stay safe.